Good morning and welcome to Rising. I'm joined at the desk today by Brianna Joy Gray, of course, where we have been really going over White Lotus season 2, which we're both obsessed with.
It's true.
A lot of theories going on. I don't know who you think is gonna get killed. Probably we shouldn't spoil it for the viewers either.
I think it's something happening in the Jennifer Coolidge storyline.
Oh, I do
that's
as well.
all I'm gonna say.
I do as well. Okay. Well, what are we talking about on our show today?
Well, apart from White Lotus and all of the looks Aubrey Plaza is serving, we'll have Revolutionary Blackout Network's Sabby Sabs joining us later. We'll discuss why House progressives are reportedly warming up to Hakeem Jeffries as minority leader. Plus, our Rising panel will dive into the Georgia runoff election as voters head to the polls to cast their vote for either Raphael Warnock or Herschel Walker. But first, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters yesterday that the release of the Twitter files detailing the platform's internal deliberations over the 2020 suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story is unhealthy and a distraction. Let's watch.
We see this as an interesting or a coincidence, if I may, that he would so haphazardly, Twitter would so haphazardly push this distraction. That is a full of old news, if you think about it. And at the same time, Twitter is facing very real and very serious questions about the rising volume of anger, hate, and anti-Semitism on their platform, and how they're letting it happen. And, the president said last week, more leaders need to speak out and reject this. And it's very alarming and very dangerous. But our focus right now is helping the American families. I just talked about what the president is going to be doing in Arizona, talking about the Chips and Science Act, talking about how we're bringing manufacturing jobs back here to the U.S., talking about under this administration, more than 700,000 jobs have been created, in manufacturing jobs to be more specific. Look, what is happening, frankly, it's not healthy. It won't do anything to help a single American improve their lives.
There seems to be something a little bit rich about trying to distract the public with other stories, when the story here is the extent to which the White House and Democrats reached out to Twitter and under its former leadership, asking for this story to be suppressed, not because it didn't have journalistic merit, but because it was disadvantageous or was perceived to be disadvantageous to then candidate Biden's presidential run. I mean, they created the story by engaging in the effort of suppression in the first instance. And I'm not sure saying there's nothing to see here, folks, is helping their case.
No, in fact, it seems very harmful to their case because it just seems so obviously ridiculous. I mean, what's the whole, isn't this interesting that he's choosing to do this right now? Well, he just took over the company. And
right.
With a clear mandate or self-described mandate to show what was going on behind the scenes at Twitter vis-a-vis or regarding some decisions it's made that the public is understandably very upset about, and that people on both sides of the aisle should be able to agree were not good. First and foremost, the Hunter Biden laptop story debacle. She's getting at, you're right, I've seen some claims that there's more hateful language on Twitter since the acquisition. This comes from this Center for Countering Digital Hate nonprofit. It's a British nonprofit that was largely responsible for the crackdown on COVID misinformation. They're the ones that circulated claims about these are the big misinformation super spreaders, if you remember that. So I find them to be a very, very explicitly activist-y kind of misinformation fighting outfit, which that's a set of skills that make me very skeptical. But whatever, I don't know. It could fine. Even if hate is worse on the platform, it doesn't really speak to this specific question, which is we want to know more about what went wrong, and we're learning more, and that seems important regardless. And I mean, she's just doing her effort to spin it as something else.
Here's the problem. There's a credibility issue from people who I think should be in a position to rightly criticize some ongoing problems with Twitter. Garland Nixon, Jackson Hinkle, a lot of prominent folks across the political spectrum, including on the left, have been taken off the platform. There has been a robust conversation about whether the choice to ban Alex Jones and now to reban Kanye West were based on actual metrics that are consistent with what Elon Musk has said is acceptable before, or whether or not it's his own personal peccadillos that are deciding these kinds of things. There are real speech issues at hand here. And unfortunately, the White House has put itself into position as not being a credible commentator on these issues and leaving it completely to others because they refuse to acknowledge that at any point they have made any poor judgments in assessing how information needs to be marshaled on this app, or whether they should have a role in it at all.
Yeah, I agree. Well, an analysis completed by Philip Bump for the Washington Post yesterday, he concluded that Twitter's censorship of the New York Post reporting did not cost Donald Trump the election in 2020. According to Google Trends data cited by the Post, social media interest in the contents of the lost laptop story began to climb only after platforms began to restrict sharing of the story. So just to address that for a minute, so I agree with that analysis. But the issue is censoring the story actually, it backfired in my view. I talked about this with Bacha yesterday.
Yeah.
It 100% Streisand effect. Because even though they could keep the story itself off YouTube, or off YouTube, sorry, have post-traumatic stress from our own ordeals, off Twitter and suppressed on Facebook, they could not stop then every other news outlet was writing about what was happening to the story, and all of those stories were on social media. So more people found out about the story, and also in a context of this is the story that is too hot to handle on social media. They don't want you to. The regime, the establishment, is afraid to let you read this. That's a really bad recipe for keeping
contributed to
something down.
Free speech as an issue in and of itself to become such a motivating issue for conservatives.
Yes.
And when you ask people why it is they think that the left is not open to free speech, why they're the ones that are suppressing free speech, the Hunter Biden laptop story is kind of the red flag that it's very difficult for anybody to push back against, because it's true. And it's fed a lot of other things that I think are not necessarily as credible, but having this really big, obvious instance in which no one can credibly say that there wasn't suppression of a legitimate news story, whatever you think the actual news value of it, but a true news story has been really damaging, I think, to the left, the broad left, liberals claimed to being people who could actually protect that fundamental First Amendment right.
It says something that this example, even more so than Trump being suspended and kicked off social media, is the thing conservatives cite for why they're mad at social media and why it's bad. It's this story.
Yeah.
And it's because it was a really mishandled decision. We learned a little bit more on Friday about why that was. Matt Taibbi in releasing these Twitter files that showed just a lot of incompetence on the part of, I think, some biased employees who, although he still did not, they haven't explained exactly who initially made the call to treat this story as unsafe, which is interesting. I don't. Maybe they don't know. Maybe it's not clear. But someone, we know who participated in making the hacked materials justification. That's what we got a lot of emails about. The Vijaya Gad playing a role. Jack Dorsey kind of not involved early on. These various comms and content moderation people saying, well, maybe it violates the hacked materials policy, or it does, right? And other people being like, does it? And well, that's what we're going with. But the initial, this is unsafe and has to be taken down. We didn't actually get the explanation for who that was, or what process resulted in it. It might not have been a person, it might have been a process.
Right, and it is worth noting that the emails show that there have been requests made in a bipartisan way for various things to be taken down, and frankly, the hero of it all in terms of Congress members seems to have been Ro Khanna, who was the one raising his hand and saying, is there actually some metric here that is based in constitutional law or something that is actually being used? Based Ro Khanna. We'll have to follow up with him and see if he has more to say about that. But before that time, I'm looking forward to hearing about what you have to say in your radar, Robby.